Get ready to find your recipe for a successful real estate lifestyle from America's top experts here at Greenlight REI with your host, Lance Edwards.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Greenlight REI. I got a super special edition this week about not so much about real estate, but about those members of our citizenry, which make it possible for us to do everything that we do. And my special guest is Mr. Dave Winters, who's president of the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund. Intrepid is one of the premier nonprofits that helps serve our active military, particularly those who've been injured, which we'll be talking about that. So we're going to be speaking to Dave here about all the great work that Intrepid does. I will tell you personally, this is my favorite cause. We've done a lot of work in supporting Intrepid, and by the time we finish here, I hope that you'll see fit to help support them as well. So, Mr. Dave Winters, welcome to the podcast.
Lance, thanks so much for having me back. It's an honor, and it's great to see you. And thank you for all you've done. You've done a great deal for us. I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Dave. It's our pleasure. So let's start off. We have some people may be familiar with Intrepid. Some people may not be familiar with Intrepid yet. So let's start here, Dave. Can you explain what is the mission of Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund?
Sure. The Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund, we're a national nonprofit organization. Our grand mission is supporting the men and women of the armed forces and their families. Our specific project right now is we're building a series of treatment centers for service members suffering from traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress. And as you know, probably a lot of your listeners will know, hundreds of thousands of service members have suffered these injuries. So they deserve, obviously, these men and women who serve our nation, so they deserve the best care possible. So we, in cooperation with the Department of Defense, have created this program to build specially designed centers, designed specifically for treating traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress. So that's what we're doing. And
Intrepid, you build the centers, but you don't operate the centers. Can you kind of explain that, perhaps?
Correct. We're not doctors, we're not caregivers, but you know, and this does have a real estate tie-in because we have a lot of experience. We know how to build. So we build these centers at military hospitals. Where patients are already being treated. But as a nonprofit organization, we raise the funds to build the centers, and we can do it quickly and we can do it efficiently. And yes, as you said, once we build the centers, once they're complete and they're fully equipped and ready to go, we then turn them over to the Department of Defense for operation. So they become, essentially part of the hospital on the base where they're built. And then DoD provides the doctors, the clinicians, the nurses, all the care providers who provide the care in these centers.
So I know there's kind of interesting history. So how did Intrepid get focused on traumatic brain injury, PTSD? How did that come about? Maybe kind of weave in a little bit of a history that led up to that, Dave.
Okay. Yeah. And please, feel free to. I can go on and on about this. So if I start going too long, just give me the hook. It's okay. But we began operations way back in 2000, and we continued the work of a great American whose name was Zachary Fisher. He's since deceased, but he initiated a whole bunch of efforts to support the men and women in the armed forces. He loved the men and women in the armed forces. And he became successful in life in real estate here in New York. Actually, Fisher Brothers is a big real estate company here in New York. He was, one of the founders. He and his brothers founded that company. But he dedicated his life and a lot of his fortune to supporting those who served and sacrificed for our nation. When he passed away in 1999, some of his family and some others, who knew him and were friends, said we should try to continue some of those efforts. One of the really wonderful efforts he had spearheaded was providing immediate grants to families of service members who were lost in performance of their duty. Now, this was back in the 1980s and 1990s. We weren't involved. This was before 9/11. Our nation, hadn't been involved in the conflicts that we've been involved in the last 20 years. But we still lose service members. You lose service members in training. You lose service members in small, limited engagement. I remember, some Coast Guardsmen were lost during a rescue at sea. So that's, those men and women are serving our nation, and they're lost just like anybody who might have been lost in combat. And he would provide immediate contributions of $25,000 to each of those families without question and without any application, without any form. And his whole purpose was, you've just lost somebody, a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, a son or daughter. Maybe that person was the breadwinner. And I don't want money to be one of your worries right now. You got plenty of other things to worry about. So he would just send this check. It was a really, really wonderful program. So when he passed away in 2000, in 1999, again, some of his family and friends sort of continued that program, and we eventually turned that into the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund.
And okay, so and then how did the focus on traumatic brain injury as opposed to any kind of loss or injury? How did that focus come about?
Right. Well, again, I said we started that program in 2000. Of course, 9/11, 2001 came about, and then in 2003 we got involved in Iraq. So unfortunately, that effort for supporting fallen service members that need became much greater. Very, very fortunately, we were able to meet that need just through the donations of many, many thousands of Americans in those early years. We were able to raise funds and give grants to it's been a long time. I don't remember the numbers now, but we probably gave about $20 million in grants to families of service members who were lost. But in 2005, Congress substantially increased the government. They call it the death gratuity, but the funds that the government would give to a family when they lost somebody in combat, and they also increased the service members group life insurance, which is essentially the military life insurance program. So both those programs were increased substantially. So those families were now being much better taken care of. So our organization sat back and said, okay, that need's now really being met. It wasn't being met before, so we were filling a need, but now that need seems to be much, it seems to be filled now. So what can we do? Well, a lot of service members were being injured, and you remember back, in Iraq and Afghanistan, you heard about the roadside bombs, the IEDs, the improvised explosive devices that were, blowing up vehicles and injuring service members. American military medicine is fantastic. It's great, and a lot more of these men and women were surviving those injuries in combat, but they were surviving with terrible wounds, with amputations, with damaged limbs, with all sorts of injuries. So we said we need to help those men and women. Now, of course, these men and women were being served by military facilities, but we said there are a whole lot of amputation injuries coming from this war. So we got together with DoD leadership and said, we're a nonprofit, we can raise funds and we can build, because we had a lot of builders, on our board. Let's build a facility specifically for these men and women suffering specifically amputation injuries and severe burn injuries and limb salvage injuries. Limb salvage is essentially you have a limb that's so damaged, you might be better off with amputating it and using a prosthetic, because that might actually give you more mobility than retaining this damaged limb. But it's better to try to save the limb and get the mobility back. So that's limb salvage. That's saving a limb. So we raised $55 million and built a facility called the Center for the Intrepid. This is down at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. That facility opened in 2007 and still growing strong and is providing amazing care for these service members suffering severe burn, amputation, or limb salvage injuries. So, we finished that center and we were back where we were before. Now what do we do? By that time, around 2008, and again, Lance, you'll recall, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will recall, traumatic brain injury really started becoming a big issue. Then it was becoming much more. The injury has always been there. It was becoming much more publicly known, and these are injuries which are much more complicated to treat than limb injuries or soft tissue injuries of the type that are being treated in the Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio. It takes a lot of expertise. So of course there was care being provided for these service members, but there weren't any facilities specifically designed for providing that care. So again, we got together with DoD leadership, Department of Defense leadership, and said, we can help in this area. So together we developed this plan. We started out with let's build one facility designed for research and diagnosis and treatment specifically of traumatic brain injury. So again, we raised the funds. That one totaled about $60 million. It's called the National Intrepid Center of Excellence. And we built it on the grounds of Walter Reed National Military Medical Center right outside Washington, D.C. in Bethesda. That facility opened in 2010, and it too was still going strong, leading in research and treatment, again, specifically for traumatic brain injury. We then said, again, together with the Department of Defense leadership, well, we have this center now, but there's, again, hundreds of thousands of service members all over the country suffering these injuries. So let's expand this care to more places. So we then struck on the program. It's called the Intrepid Spirit Center program. We build Intrepid Spirit Centers. These are centers just like that first facility in Bethesda that are specifically designed for treating traumatic brain injury. So we're building a series of 10 of these centers at military bases all across the country. We've already opened 9. So, this project is, and we've got 1 more to go. So it's been going successfully. The first of these centers opened in 2013. We've opened, roughly 1 a year since then, and they're providing these centers again, same program. We raise the funds, we build the center, then we turn it over to the Department of Defense for operation, and their expert, care providers go in and they start providing care. And it's an amazing program, a very, very successful program.
And the thing that struck me, I know when we spoke to you, I spoke to you last time, Dave, is that, of course, intentionally you put these centers next to bases, as I recall, correct?
Because they're on the bases right next to the hospitals. Yes.
On the base, but these are they're still active military personnel, and sometimes they're having these injuries. They don't necessarily know they have the injury because it's playing out in terms of, I don't know, mood swings or PTSD. If I'm correct there, can you talk about that? And that's why you have it close to the base.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. 2 things. One is, yes, we want to serve active duty military personnel, because if these injuries go untreated, they can get worse and worse, and ultimately, prevent somebody from serving the armed forces. And these men and women, they want to continue service. That's what they live for. That's what they train for. But more important, we want them to have a productive life and a happy life. Traumatic brain injury can manifest in all sorts of different ways. As you said, mood swings and memory problems, headaches. You can forget where you are. You can lose concentration. And again, all these things, you can imagine how that might affect your ability to serve in the armed forces, or even your ability to just have a normal life. The challenge with traumatic brain injury is not like, again, the physical injuries being treated in that center, in the Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio. You can see a limb injury. You can see a bullet wound or a shrapnel wound, or that's obvious. All right, that's the wound. This is what we have to do to treat it, and you treat it. A brain injury, traumatic brain injury, it's not visible. You can't just look at a patient and say, all right, I know what your problem is, because it's inside the brain. There's a physical aspect to it. There's a psychological aspect to it. But I'll actually focus. There really is a physical aspect to it, because you can get a concussion. You're in a vehicle that rolls over due to an accident or an explosion, a roadside bomb. You get you're too close to an explosion. You get a blast wave through you. You're not injured by shrapnel from the explosion, but you get rattled, essentially. And this causes a physical injury inside the brain, and hard to diagnose. And if you can't diagnose it correctly, you can't treat it correctly. And if you can't treat it correctly, all those problems we were talking about before, the memory loss, the loss of concentration, the mood swings, the getting angry at friends or family, all these sorts of things, they can get worse. And again, it can even get worse from not being able to serve in the armed forces. You can lose the ability to live a normal life. You can lose your job. You can lose your home. You can lose your family. That's tragic. That is absolutely tragic. These men and women serve our nation. They volunteer to serve, and they serve courageously. And we can't, have that happen to them because of an injury. It's not that they've changed their mind or they've changed their attitude. Now I'm just going to go be a rotten person, or be a person who can't concentrate or can't focus. It's an injury, just like being, shot in the arm or leg, or having shrapnel or any other type of physical injury. So these centers are really special. The second part is that there's a very specific model of care that is practiced in these centers. Now, as a matter of fact, the centers are designed around this model of care. It's called the patient-centered interdisciplinary model of care, which simply means that all the disciplines involved in treating traumatic brain injury, there's neurology, there's psychology, there's different types of physical therapies, there's speech therapy, there's nurse practitioners, there's spiritual care, all sorts of different disciplines are involved. Well, no single doctor or care provider has all the knowledge of all the disciplines. It takes a bunch of different care providers, but they all work together in the center together. That's the key. They're not assigned here and there, and the patient goes to this doctor, the doctor refers him to another doctor. That's where they work. They all work together in the center. So when the patient comes in, they can all the caregivers can meet the patient, understand what's happening with the patient, provide a diagnosis for the patient, and then provide an executed treatment plan, all right there in that one center. That's what makes this program special, and it's extremely effective. I think since the last time you and I talked, there was an 8-year study was conducted by patients being treated at that first center, the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, the one at Walter Reed. And it showed that this type of care significantly reduced symptoms in 7 specific areas of complaint, things like headaches, things like concentration, things like memory. I don't remember all 7 off the top of my head, but 7 real measures of how, these 7 symptoms can affect my life. This treatment showed real scientifically proven reduction in all of those symptoms. So it's a really, really effective means of care. And also, over 90% of patients treated in these centers are able to continue their service in the armed forces, and that's the goal. That's what they want. And even more importantly, it can keep their family, it can save their families. And
Yes.
if your husband or wife comes back from combat and is changed because of a traumatic brain injury, and if the patient doesn't understand he has this injury and he doesn't, this happens a lot. A patient will have a traumatic brain injury, but you don't realize you have an injury. Your personality might start changing, but you don't realize it. The people around you realize it. Your wife or your husband realizes it. Your parents, your kids, maybe, certainly your colleagues, your colleagues in the armed forces where you work. But if you don't realize, you yourself, the patient, don't realize you have this issue, then you're not going to go get treatment. So having family, having colleagues help, refer these patients to our facilities, which are now, again, at 9, in addition to the one at Bethesda and at Walter Reed, there are now 9 of these centers all around the country. This allows them to get that help.
That is, first of all, congratulations on the study where 90%. That's just amazing. That'd be obviously very gratifying to everyone that supports Intrepid. And I think you guys are on you're on the leading edge basically of this sounds like with the treatment, in terms of not only the treatment of the interdisciplinary approach of it, but the proximity of putting it right next to basically where they're at the base. So it's a minimal disruption for them to go get treatment and get back to, being active, which they want to be.
Exactly.
So I got a question. Now that you've done this study, you've seen the validated the whole approach. Has this approach been used in other countries? Has it spread out beyond the United States, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, no. We'd also like to spread it in the United States, to veterans care, to civilian care. I mean, there's lots of civilians. You can have a car accident and suffer traumatic brain injury. We want that person to get better too. It's a little bit challenging because even though there's this study that provides, we had anecdotal proof of the effectiveness of this treatment for many years, but a study really kind of brings it to the next level. This is, it's a scientifically rigorous, program. But still adapting, this was really revolutionary, this type of care, but adapting that to a larger context is very complicated. Perhaps the VA, and again, I don't want to speculate or speak for it, but this might be applicable to VA care where Veterans Administration doctors are providing care to veterans. It might be harder in the wider civilian world because civilian medical care and insurance isn't really designed for providing comprehensive care in one integrative setting like this. So that might take some adaptations. Our main focus is keeping these centers up and running and keep military personnel moving through them and getting the care so that we at least are helping that core, our key population.
All right, so let's make sure I got it right. So the study showed scientifically that, driven by data, 90% reduction rate or 90% improvement rate. What was the 90% factor?
Well, the 90% factor, that comes from data from the centers that we've gotten for years. They just judge their patients, and most patients are able to continue their service. I'll note, by the way, that roughly 10% of patients who aren't able to continue their service in the armed forces, not all of that is due to their traumatic brain injury. A number of the patients have other physical injuries also that accompany their traumatic brain injuries. Those other injuries might be what's preventing them from serving. So that 90%, it's the treatment of brain injury is actually higher than that 90%.
Wow.
These centers aren't designed to, certainly the soldiers, if they have other injuries, they're being helped at the hospital or elsewhere with those other injuries. But that study's focused on seven specific areas, I don't want to say discomfort because it's more than that, but 7 specific areas that of traumatic brain injury impact on a patient. Things like headache or sleep disorder was one. So there were seven things like, and again, forgive me, I just don't remember all 7 off the top of my head, but the study showed a significant reduction in the impact of all 7 of those, areas after treatment at one of our centers. So, you might have a high level of sleep disorder. You finish treatment, your sleep disorder is much lower. You're able to, get a good night's sleep, or, that's really important. If you don't get a good night's sleep, that can impact your life in a whole lot of ways. So that's just one example. Headache. Imagine going through life with a constant headache or frequent headaches. Reducing that greatly increases the quality of life for the patient. So that's what that study showed, and that's what was so important, on a scientific level.
I'm thinking off the cuff here, and that may be, talking about back to real estate, this may be the most impactful application of real estate, or certainly one of the top ones. The fact that kind of impact. I mean, it's putting it next to these bases and have that type of impact on people's lives. That's really phenomenal. That's just awesome. So yeah, I want to go ahead.
Well, I'll just note it's a wonderful cooperative project between the Department of Defense and the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund as a nonprofit organization, because we're building on military bases, and that's that has all sorts of complications. So Department of Defense essentially cedes this plot of land to us, then we can build. So we don't have to go through government procurement process for the building materials and the contractors and all that. We can, we have a very rigorous process of our own, to make sure that these are quality structures, and every nail, is quality. So it's not normally how a building is built on a military base, but for this program, this is the way we worked it out, and again, we worked it out cooperatively with the Department of Defense, and it's a partnership. They provide the land, they provide the utilities. The base has electricity, water, sewer. The base, usually the Army Corps of Engineers, extends those facilities to our site, and then we take it from there, and then dig and build the structure. So it's a really wonderful partnership. I'll also note that, and again, you know a lot more about real estate than I do, but the contractors we work with, and we work generally with different contractors in each base, they love this project because everybody knows somebody who has served. Maybe they have family members who serve, and when they bid, we bid the projects out, but when they learn about what it's really about, they kind of go the extra mile for us. We've had some of our contractors. We were, Turner Construction. I'll drop in. Turner Construction has been the construction manager for a number of our projects. On Colorado, the newest center at Fort Carson we just opened earlier this year. Turner Construction had their annual their Colorado area had their annual fundraising golf tournament, and they gave the proceeds to the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund, $50,000, which they don't have to do. They can support other charities, but by working on a project, they became so close to it, they wanted to do more, which I thought was really, really wonderful. And we've seen that everywhere. We've seen that at all the locations that we build. So you're not fighting your contractor and arguing with them. They love the project. They want to help, and they'll give extra to it. So that's just, we weren't expecting that, but it was wonderful to see, and we've seen it all over. So that's just kind of a nice little extra as we are talking about real estate.
Yeah, it's very. It's special that everybody wants to help. So my next question is, and you kind of mentioned the anecdotal. I know there's a number of stories on the Intrepid website about our active military who have benefited. I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there a story that comes to mind of, a person that was benefited, kind of the before and after, what that meant to them? And if not, I understand.
Oh, sure. There are a couple. I'll try to be brief, but one is, I'm thinking about one guy. His name was Pete. This was a number of years ago, but he was a Navy SEAL. Okay, so no, definitely not a slacker. And the guy was a SEAL in multiple deployments in both Afghanistan and Iraq. But he cycled back home. He's still on active duty, but he's not deployed. So he's working, and he's in Virginia, and he starts kind of acting funny. His wife sees him acting funny. One day, it's a Sunday. He goes out to buy milk or something. He finds himself in the parking lot of work, far away, sitting in his car on a Sunday, and sitting in his car, going, "What am I doing here?" He's thinking to himself. So he started having these, memory issues, these, or doing strange things, and started being kind of nasty to his wife. And he was never like that before. And fortunately, he had a colleague who was familiar with our services and had been through one of our centers, and he referred Pete to there. And Pete, this is again, Pete. This is from 4 or 5 years ago, but he received that care, and was able to continue to serve for several more years. Now he's retired. I understand he's playing country music. He's got still happily married. But who knows what trajectory his life would have taken? If you're doing things like driving your car to work on a Sunday and sitting in the parking lot and sitting in an empty parking lot wondering why you're there, you're not going to be effective. Certainly not in combat. You're not going to be effective even administratively doing work. And what might that do to his family? There's another even more stark example. A friend of mine named Steve, Marine Corps major. He's retired now, but he was on active duty at the time. And he came back again, multiple deployments, and his wife noticed changing. He started losing his temper quickly, and forgetting things and getting frustrated, and then taking that frustration on his wife, which again was not him. That was not what he was like before. And you might remember this. I tell this story a lot, so you might even remember this one. But he found one day he found himself screaming at his wife, screaming over a pizza topping, and then he saw his little son, I think 3 years old at the time, cowering in the corner, covering his ears because Daddy was yelling so violently at Mommy. And suddenly that made something. Fortunately, I made something click in Steve. That's something's wrong here, because that's not me. And he was able to get help. The challenge is a lot of these service members don't have that, that light bulb moment where, something's going on, I need help. So they need their colleagues, they need their families, they need their friends to say, hey, Joe, you've come back from combat, you're acting differently. Maybe let's go get you checked. And that's what our centers are for.
I'm going to ask you this question because before I do that, before I ask you another question, I got just a few more questions, but let everybody know right now. So where does Intrepid need help right now? I know, of course, obviously financial support. So if somebody wants to support Intrepid, where do they go to do that?
Well,
which page?
Thanks for asking. Our website is fallenheroesfund.org. And we're also on social media. And yes, as you said, we're a nonprofit. We're not part of the government. We're not part of the military. We're a nonprofit. Every dime to build and equip these centers comes from donations from the American public. Each of these centers costs $12-ish million to build. Again, we've got one more to go. We want to start construction on our 10th center down in Fort Bliss, Texas. We want to start it soon. And we've raised some of the money for it, but we need to raise the rest. We need a few $million more. So if your listeners want to help, please, I urge you to go to fallenheroesfund.org. Take a look at our website. If you want to learn more about us, I'm not asking you just go give money blindly, but take a look. Take a look at our financial statements are on there. Our audits are on there. We're Charity Watch rates us as A or A plus all the time. We're a good steward of our donors' money. We don't want to waste money. We don't spend 40 cents of every dollar on administrative costs or anything like that. Our expenses are under 10 cents to the dollar. So what you're giving is going to go to building these centers, and you won't be helping us. You'll be helping these men and women who've served our nation and who deserve this care. I will say a nice thing is that we have been able to. We've raised over $100 million for this program in the last 10 years, and we've been able to build our first 9 centers. And Lance, when you think about it, we first went to war, right after September 11th, 2001. That's 22 years ago, right? That's a whole generation.
Yeah.
But Americans, even after that long amount of time, Americans are still willing to reach into their pockets and give to support those who serve. I think that says something really, everyone talks about how divided our nation is right now and all that, but that says something really nice about all Americans, that we're a nation that will, even after so long, we'll still give extra. We won't say, it's the government's responsibility to care of these guys. You could say that, but it's really our responsibility. We're all fellow citizens. We're all, part of this great country. And that people will after that long amount of time, people are still willing to give. I think that just says something really, really nice about America.
That is an excellent point, because it wasn't always that way, was it, in our lifetime? Was it, Dave?
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah, and so that's and also I think it's very, very well, just to the country and to our active military, that high quality of the people that volunteer, to go serve the country. So fallenheroesfund.org, fallenheroesfund.org, and Dave won't say it, but I'll say it. Just put some money in there. Just do it. It's going to a good cause, and it's the vast bulk of it, like 95 cents out of the dollar, is going to serve an active serviceman or woman. So it's, like you said, it's not 40 cents going to do all these other things. It's going to serve the intended cause. So that's why, I've been, known about Intrepid, supporting my own small way for all these years. But that's what attracted me. Besides the A and A+ rating, is that the vast majority of the money goes to the cause. That's not always true for every nonprofit out there.
Right.
So I got a few more questions. And now there was a time, you tell me about this, that I've had family military for multiple generations, and not too long ago there was kind of a stigma about PTSD and getting treated for some of this, and that sometimes they wouldn't come forward. I think that's starting to change, but I imagine is the fact that there's a presence of these centers on the bases, is that contributing to it as well? Because it has, there's this big presence here. Can you comment to that?
Yeah, it's been a big problem. You're absolutely right. And the stigma comes from it can come from a lot of areas, but kind of a major idea, and this is what people in the military have told me, is that if you go for what is considered psychological care, you're afraid of kind of getting branded. And if you're branded, if you have some psychological issue, that might affect your advancement in your military career. And nobody wants that. I certainly understand that. But we're talking about injuries here. We're talking about these are traumatic brain injury. Is injury. It's a physical injury. You got a concussion or whatever happened. You have an injury in your head that has to be treated. And there's no shame in that, because it's an injury. Just like if you broke your arm, that's an injury. There's no shame in going to get your arm in a sling because you broke it. And a lot of the reduction of that stigma is coming essentially from peers and from colleagues. Again, I talked about Pete, that Navy SEAL. After his treatment, he went back and talked to the guys on his SEAL team, and said, the stuff that was bothering me, I see that in some of you guys. Wow. Go to the center, go get it taken care of. There's nothing wrong. I did it, and I'm back. And so that's gone a long way. Of course, Department of Defense has adjusted some policies and encouraged this sort of care. And our facilities, I'll add, they don't. It's probably not fair to say this, but don't look like, they're not square concrete, government-looking buildings. These are beautiful structures, and they're beautiful for a reason. We want them to be extremely comforting for patients, because patients, again, with these traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress, they react to their surroundings. So we want this to be, so they're beautiful, physically beautiful buildings, and they're very, very comfortable on the inside. And that's we do that consciously to aid the healing process. And, we want people to come to someplace that's comfortable. They can sit down. It's nice chairs, it's nice paint. There's beautiful art, all designed to be comforting. So that helps also. We don't, there's a big sign. It's an Intrepid Spirit Center. It's not, it's not hidden in the back. It's right next to the hospital. You can't miss it. As you said before, these are they have a presence on the base, and it's not some back door you have to go in for this care. Proudly walk in. Proudly walk in. I need this care because I want to continue serving. I want to be a good husband, wife, father, mother, or son or daughter. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
It's, I just kind of, if I listened, I didn't realize all the things between the, you have an attractive building that's kind of, draws people in. It's not, like you say, it's not a bunker. It's not a back door. It's an attractive building to lure you in, and very comfortable facility to come into. And then that combined with this interdisciplinary approach, once they're inside with the treatment, now you have more people, hopefully stepping forward to get the treatment. Then they have this great treatment, and you have 90, practically what I'm hearing about, like 95% effectiveness for the traumatic brain injury. Mm-hmm. That's just, you'll be very proud. That's just awesome that you're leading this, Dave. Congratulations. Well,
I appreciate that. I'm more proud of the people who give. Again, $100 million that I didn't, I couldn't write that check myself. But a lot of people give. We appreciate people who give big donations. We appreciate people who give small donations, because every little bit adds up and helps. So I appreciate you saying that to me. But I'm really proud of our donors, and there are thousands of them who believe in this and believe in the men and women who serve and who give.
Well, I got to put a plug in for you. So you have, I imagine this is still the case, you have the coolest office on planet Earth. If it's still the one that I met you in, is that still the case?
Absolutely. This is where we get our name. We're based on the aircraft carrier Intrepid, which is the centerpiece of the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum in New York. The Intrepid Museum was founded by that same gentleman, the late Zachary Fisher, who inspired our work. He founded this museum. So if you're in New York, you're going to visit New York, I'll throw out a plug out to the museum. You have to go to the Intrepid Museum. It'll tell you what, you'll learn what life is like on an aircraft carrier. Intrepid served in World War II, served in Vietnam, served in the space race, was a NASA recovery vessel, and served in the Cold War. And we have a guided missile submarine and a British Airways Concorde at the museum. So lots to see. And yeah, my office is on the gallery deck, which is one deck below the hangar deck, one deck below the flight deck, which is the top of the.
Oh, I just lost you. Let's see.
I think I accidentally muted myself.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, yeah, definitely visit the Intrepid Museum.
But was it the captain's quarters where your office is in?
No. No, my office is it used to be a flight surgeon's office, but it also used to be something else. I don't remember what. They actually combined two spaces on ships. Even huge aircraft carriers are tiny. So to have offices and the museum has certainly exhibit spaces. Lots of modifications had to be made, but yeah, it's a little bit of interesting history there.
But besides being president of Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund, you're also responsible. You run the museum too, correct?
Well, I'm the executive vice president of the museum as well. So oversee events and some other things at the museum. So again, certain plug for the museum also. Definitely go visit.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's fabulous. There's besides the Concorde, there's a I would call it a shuttle in there, space shuttle.
We have the Space Shuttle Enterprise.
Yeah,
it's a prototype space shuttle. Absolutely.
All kind of aircraft. It's fascinating tour. You gotta go check it out. All right, so phenomenal work. What question have I not asked that I should have asked about Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund and all the great work you're doing? What point should I have raised, Dave?
No, I think you've been pretty thorough. Again, I'll just repeat that we have 9 of these centers. We East Coast, West Coast, middle of the country. Again, the newest one we opened is at Fort Carson in Colorado. So they're all over the place. So every American has a stake in these because you got one either in your neighborhood or a state or two away, and they're helping service members from those regions where they're located. I will again extend a great word of thanks to the men and women who serve in these centers. These are really, really dedicated professionals, and they're providing amazing care. Without them, I told you these are beautiful buildings. The equipment is great, but without the care providers inside, they're just buildings. So my hats are off to these men and women who really are dedicated to providing great, amazing patient care and are getting results. I've met a lot of them. They're without exception, amazing people.
Are they all military or some of them civilian?
No, some are civilian, some are military, some are Army, Navy, U.S. Public Health Service, and some civilians. So there's a healthy mix, and it works.
All right, so everyone, right now you're going to go to www.fallenheroesfund.org and support our active military and the great work the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund is doing. It's just phenomenal. Again, follow fallenheroesfund.org. And you can read all about it and help out, make a contribution. Any size will do, because they got another center they got to build, and then they got more they got to do after that. So, Dave, this has been fabulous. I want to thank you for just congratulations. Thank you for the great work you've been doing, a long term of service to serving our military and everything you're doing. So, thank you, sir.
Well, Lance, thank you. 2 things. One, thank you you put your money where your mouth is. You're a supporter, and I appreciate that. And thank you for having me on again. So it's a pleasure to see you again. And it's good talking to you, and I appreciate you giving me some time here to talk to your listeners.
All right, so everybody, till next time, go to fallenheroesfund.org.
You've been listening to Interview with the Experts with Lance Edwards. Let us now blatantly and shamelessly bribe you toward creating your own real estate lifestyle by offering you a whole bunch of free stuff. Go to greenlightreinvesting.com and get you some free stuff and this session's show notes. That's greenlightreinvesting.com.